But a question I have for you about songwriting, and I don't want to take up too much of your time, so we'll wrap it up soon. But I want to say thank you actually for taking the
No,
time. It's
it's
been a blast.
fine. I love this one. I have a show as well, Demoitis, where I
Oh,
talk to
sweet.
songwriters and we on Instagram and we play like clips of our demos, like unfinished
That's
demos.
fun.
And we talk about the songwriting process. So I love this. I love talking about this stuff and sharing and hearing your stories and your experiences too. It's just
Well, I'm
fun.
glad. Yeah, I love these conversations. But what do you what being that you've worked with a lot of great songwriters and written a lot of great songs and the work you've done, what do you define as a good song? Or what makes a good song, like in your eyes? Because everybody's, I want you to, but this is Micky Blue's perspective. Because not
Right.
what you think is like what is you personally that think is a good
Right.
song.
Yes. Which everything is subjective.
Absolutely, that's why I want to know your
There's
opinion.
there's
Absolutely,
stuff on the radio that I'm like, really, guys? And
absolutely,
there's other songs that I'm like, oh, I wish that I wrote that so good. Like,
absolutely. But it has 3 plays on Spotify.
past replays,
Exactly.
exactly. Um, God, for me, okay, so I think what makes a truly great song is that within the first 5 seconds, you like it's something that you'd remember if you heard it again, you know? So
Mm.
maybe it's like a melodic guitar part. Like I think of like Fleetwood Mac or some like those bands, you know, or the Beatles or whatever. And it's like when you just hear that opening like first couple of seconds,
Yeah.
like okay, think of the Beach Boys, God Only Knows.
Uh huh.
The da 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 da
I
da
was just
right
singing that
away.
yesterday. Actually, that's so funny.
Oh, oh, it's one of the
It was
greatest
stuck in
songs
my. It
of
was
all
randomly
time.
stuck in my head, and I was trying to figure out where the reference was. But thank you for reminding me that it was the Beach Boys. I couldn't
It's
remember.
the
Yeah.
Beach Boys,
Yeah.
yeah. So when you hear that, you immediately know the rest of the song,
Yep.
and I think that's something really important that I've learned,
Mm.
like that, and that for me, like sometimes I struggle with that. If I'm not with the right producer, I'm like they're not going to deliver that opening lick because it's usually
Mm-hmm.
not starting with the vocal; it's
Mm-hmm.
starting with some kind of groove, you
Yeah.
know. So I think that's really, really important, like an undeniable
Yeah.
groove
I mean,
that's just as melodic as the melody, like
yeah.
the main pop line, the vocal melody. Um, I think the arc of well, it also depends on the genre, right? Like
Sure.
the if we're talking like pop music, like kind of universally, um, yeah, and the lyrics I think are very important, but they're not as important as the melody. And
Agreed.
something I've learned from working in Sweden a lot and working with Swedish people who are pop geniuses
A hundred
is
percent.
that phonetics are everything. Like you need to sacrifice that important lyric for something that phonetically sounds smoother because not everyone listens to the lyrics. And you're a true master of your craft if you can make the phonetics incredibly smooth with an undeniably clever lyric. And those are like hit songs. You know what I
Not
mean?
everything Max Martin has ever done.
Everything Max has ever done. But even like with Max, it's like hit me baby one more time. Like I don't think anyone coming from the US would have thought of that lyric because we're like, that's abusive. Hit me baby one more time. That's like physical assault. And you cannot put that in a song with a
Isn't that
girl.
song? But isn't that what it's about?
No, because it's more like hit me back, like hit me up, you know? That's what
Wow,
it means.
I totally. I mean, I haven't heard
No
this
one
song in
thinks,
forever, but I
but no one
assumed
thinks
actually.
about
That's
no one
funny.
thinks about that. Like,
Yeah.
and apparently Matt, I heard this from someone that
Oh, that's
apparently
so
Matt
funny.
was like, I thought it was like hit me up. Like that's the intention, which is why when you hear the song, it doesn't feel like awkward and
Sure,
abusive.
sure, sure.
If you read the lyrics, like hit me baby one more time, like if I was my grandparents back then, I would have been like, what the hell? Like
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
this is terrible. But
yeah,
that's not like you when you're listening to it, you don't feel like it's that
yeah.
doesn't have that context. But I think yeah, phonetics are so important. I think having a really interesting voice is
Mm,
important. Like I know that it's
yeah.
about the songwriting, but like it's also about the performance,
And
right?
uniqueness for sure.
The unique sound.
Absolutely.
So
To piggyback on your first comment is I want to say is very interesting, and you mentioned it. It's because it's not what I would have expected. I was for asking the question, I was actually more thinking in terms of like songwriting specifically, but you mentioned production actually and the musicality behind it, which is fascinating because it's actually really true. Like think of any hit song. Like, I thought of so many examples while you were speaking, like from even the '60s to '70s to now. For example, like Back in Black, AC/DC, ban, banana, or like what's his name, Ozzy Osbourne with dun on dun dun, or even like Ed Sheeran with Thinking Out Loud, the dun dun. You could just instantly, they're all super melodic, catch, and instantly you hear three notes. You hear Queen, or any of these songs, like this instant like
Pressure by Queen,
yeah, bum 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 bada bum bum. Instantly, you're right. That is so fascinating. Actually, it's totally not what I would have expected, but it is totally true.
It's
Because
true, though.
Often a lot of those are melody just on an instrument rather than actually on a
Yeah, and I think like at least from a producer's perspective, like if I'm coming in, like we're all bringing something to the table, right? And some writers are better at melodies, some are better at
sure,
lyrics,
sure,
concepts, or sometimes just like vibe. There's also like a vibe
sure.
person sometimes, which is also very important to certain situations. But as the producer, I'm like, man, if you can give me just some undeniable groove that just feels amazing from just the first two measures,
Yeah,
I will be able to give you the best song I can.
yeah.
Like you're giving me the best you can.
That is
So
so interesting. That's such an interesting perspective, man. I really like
like
that.
you said, be prepared, right? But it's all
Yeah,
about that. Like everyone's got to bring their best to the table in the session.
yeah. But I'm just even blown away. Like, that you just gave me a really interesting perspective on music, though. It's really funny because, like, I think so often songwriters, especially like musicians that write their own songs, right? Like that, or like really, I care a lot about the lyrics that I write. Like, I'm very intentional about them. But you're right, and if you could write the best lyrics in the world, but like if you really wanted to be played by the masses, which artist really doesn't? We all there's a noble artist where it's like, no, I'm doing it for the craft, but like like or the craft, but like
Yeah.
who you kidding yourself? You're telling me that if it was number one on the Billboard, like you'd be like, oh no, the craft is sacrificed. Like, come on, everybody wants that.
Yeah.
But it's like you're right. Like it's not just about the words you say. It's not just about how you're saying it. Like you said, the phonetics, like the intro music is very. I mean, I'm thinking even Taylor Swift loves story, loves da na 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 na. Like it's like so you can instantly hear it in your head.
Yeah.
That's fascinating.
Thank you.
Yeah. That's funny.